Let her watch the kids. She's not good for anything else. The words cut through the wooden door like icy daggers, lodging themselves in my chest with devastating precision. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would. And if you, for just a second, feel like this sounds familiar, I only ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening my soul. My name is Eleanor Vance. I'm 62 years old, and I live in a suburb of Phoenix, in an Adobe-style house I built with my late husband 30 years ago, back when I still believed that family love was eternal and unbreakable. The walls of my home hold the scent of cinnamon and hot cocoa I've prepared for decades, but today, that smell is mixed with the bitter taste of betrayal. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I had just returned from the downtown farmers market, where I bought the poblano peppers my grandchildren love for their favorite green chili chicken enchilada casserole. My wrinkled hands, marked by years of tireless work, held the grocery bags as I slowly climbed the stairs of my house. The weight of the groceries was nothing compared to the weight I was unknowingly carrying in my soul. As I reached the second floor, I heard familiar voices coming from my own living room. Claire, my daughter, and Mark, her husband, were sitting on my green velvet sofa, the one that cost me so much to buy when they were young. They used my house as if it were their own, drank my coffee, ate my oatmeal cookies, and talked about me as if I were a nuisance. I stopped in the hallway, hidden behind the slightly ajar door, my heart beating so loudly I feared they would hear me. The grocery bags trembled in my hands when I heard the words that would change my life forever. "The tickets she gave me, I hid them," Claire said with a cruel laugh I had never heard from her before. "Can you imagine? A trip to Italy. As if an old woman like her could give us anything useful. She won't even notice." My world collapsed. The tickets, my surprise gift. The trip to Tuscany I had planned for months, saving dollar by dollar from my modest Social Security check. I had contacted a travel agency downtown, carefully chosen a hotel near the historic center, and booked tours for them to see the art and the vineyards. It was my way of thanking them for letting me take care of my grandchildren, for giving me a purpose after I was widowed. "What if she finds out?" Mark asked. And I could imagine his sarcastic smile, the smirk that always appears when he talks about money. "She won't. She's so desperate to feel useful that she'll accept anything. Let her stay with the kids while we go on vacation to Las Vegas. Besides, she's not good for anything else." There it was. The naked truth. Brutal. I, the woman who had raised them, who had sacrificed my dreams so they could have theirs, who had sold my wedding jewelry to pay for Claire's college education, was nothing more than a free nanny, a silent servant who worked in exchange for the crumbs of affection they chose to give me. I stood motionless, feeling my legs turn to jelly. The grocery bags fell to the floor with a thud, and the poblano peppers rolled down the hallway like green tears I couldn't yet shed. In 62 years of life, I had never felt a pain so deep, so certain, so devastating. I vividly remember my youth, when Arthur and I dreamed of building a close-knit family. He worked at the textile mill, and I gave sewing classes from home. When Claire was born, we promised we would love her so much she would never feel alone. When my second child, Stephen, arrived, I swore my children would always have a present, loving, unconditional mother. But Arthur died 15 years ago from a sudden heart attack, and since then I had dedicated myself, body and soul, to being the best mother and grandmother in the world. I moved into a smaller apartment to be close to Claire. I cared for her children when they were babies, spent sleepless nights with them when they had fevers, walked them to school for years, prepared thousands of meals, and washed mountains of clothes. Never a "thank you, Mom," never a spontaneous hug, never a question about how I was feeling. From the living room, they continued talking as if I were a thing, not a person. "On Saturday, just leave her with the kids all day. We have the reservation at that restaurant in Vegas," Mark said. "It's perfect that she doesn't know about the trip. That way she won't get any silly ideas." Claire laughed. A laugh that once seemed musical to me and now sounded like broken glass. "Oh, Mark, sometimes I think we should put her in a nursing home. She's getting too old and the kids need their independence. Besides, the house is getting too small for us." A nursing home. The words echoed in my head like a death sentence. After a lifetime devoted to others, my destiny was to be discarded like old furniture. sent to a place where I would die among strangers, forgotten by the people I had loved most. I moved away from the hallway in silence, went up to my bedroom, and carefully closed the door. I sat on the bed where Arthur and I had slept for 25 years, where I had planned his birthday surprises, where I had dreamed of growing old surrounded by the love of my family. I opened my nightstand drawer and took out the confirmation from the travel agency. It was all there. The plane tickets, the hotel reservations, the complete itinerary. My gift of love had been turned into a secret humiliation. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake looking at the family photos hanging on the wall, wondering at what point I stopped being a mother and became a burden. At dawn on Wednesday, as the first rays of sun filtered through my bedroom curtains, I decided to look through the family albums I kept in the closet. I needed to remember when all this had started, when my unconditional love had transformed into silent servitude. I took out the wooden box Arthur had carved for me as a wedding gift. Inside were decades of photographs, receipts, letters, and memories that told the story of a woman who had slowly faded away, like cheap ink in the rain. The first photograph broke my heart. Claire, barely 2, in my arms during her first communion at Sacred Heart Parish. I was wearing my navy blue dress, the only elegant one I had then, and a smile that radiated genuine happiness. My eyes shone with the hope of a young mother who believed that love would always be returned. When had my transformation into a shadow begun? I vividly remembered the day Claire called me crying, 8 years ago. She had just had her first son, Leo, and she didn't know how to handle the sleepless nights, the constant crying, the feeling of not being enough. "Mom, I need you," she had said in a broken voice. "Please, come help me. I don't know what to do." Without a second's hesitation, I sold my small house in the old Santa Fe district, the little house that Arthur and I had bought with so much effort, where we had been happy for years. I used all the money from the sale for my grandchildren's education and to help with the new family's expenses. I moved into the storage room in Claire's house, a tiny, windowless space where a single bed and a small wardrobe barely fit. "It's temporary, Mom," Claire had told me as she showed me the little room. "Just until we get organized." 8 years later, I was still sleeping in that room that smelled of dampness and detergent. During those years, I had become the perfect domestic service machine. My day began at 5 in the morning when I got up to make Mark's lunch before he left for his construction company job. At 6, I would wake the children, bathe them, prepare their breakfast, always scrambled eggs with refried beans, just how they liked it, and walk them 15 blocks to school under the relentless Arizona sun. While Claire and Mark worked, I stayed home cleaning, washing, ironing, cooking. In the afternoons, I would pick the kids up from school, help them with their homework, prepare their snacks, and stay with them until their parents returned, usually after 9 at night. On weekends, when other grandmothers rested or met friends at the park, I took care of the children so Claire and Mark could go out. "We need time for ourselves, Mom," Claire would say as she got ready to go to the movies or dinner. "You understand, right?" And I always understood. I always smiled. I always said yes. In the box, I found an envelope full of receipts that made my hands tremble. They were all the proofs of the expenses I had covered over these years: school tuition, uniforms, medicine, toys, even family vacations where I stayed behind to watch the house. I mentally added up the amounts, and the number left me breathless. Over $20,000 from my modest Social Security and my life savings. They had never paid me back a single cent. They had never offered to pay for anything. To them, my money was as invisible as I was. I remembered my 60th birthday. I had waited all week for them to have a small celebration for me. Anything to remind me that I still existed as a person, not just as a free housekeeper. I prepared my own favorite meal, roast chicken with all the trimmings, hoping someone would notice the special date. Claire arrived that afternoon and found the table set with an embroidered tablecloth and flowers from the garden. "What's with all the elegance, Mom?" she asked, surprised. "It's my birthday," I replied with a trembling smile. "Oh, right. I completely forgot. Well, happy birthday. By the way, could you watch the kids tomorrow too? We have an important dinner with Mark's bosses." She didn't even stay to have dinner with me. She took a plate of the chicken I had prepared to try at home. and left me alone with the 3-layer cake I had bought at St. Jude's Bakery, hoping to share it with someone who loved me. I ate alone, quietly singing happy birthday to myself, feeling the salty tears mix with the sweet frosting of the cake. The photograph that hurt the most to find was one from last year, during the Christmas Eve party. The whole family was smiling around the nativity scene I had so carefully assembled. Claire, Mark, and the children posed happily while I, barely visible in a corner of the picture, held the gifts I had bought for everyone. My face showed the exhaustion of having prepared Christmas dinner for 15 people, of having decorated the entire house, of having wrapped each gift in tissue paper and golden ribbons. That Christmas Eve, while everyone opened their presents with joy, I waited for someone to give me something, any small token to remind me that I was also part of that family. But my only gift was the opportunity to wash all the dirty dishes at the end of the night. Mark had received an expensive designer shirt. Claire, a pair of gold earrings. The children, toys and video games. And I received the phrase that would echo for months. "Thanks for everything, Mom. This wouldn't be possible without you." But thanks didn't fill the void growing in my chest. Pretty words didn't heal the wound of feeling invisible, of being valued only for what I could give, never for who I was. I closed the album and went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. Like every day, I set the table for 4 people, Claire, Mark, and the 2 children. There was never a place at that table for me. I ate standing up, next to the stove, while I served and attended to everyone's needs. That morning, while stirring the eggs in the pan, I heard Claire talking on the phone with someone in the living room. "No, Mom can't come. Someone has to stay with the kids," she said. "Besides, you know how she is. She gets very sentimental at family gatherings. Family gatherings, from which I, being part of the family, was systematically excluded. I found out in that moment that there was a luncheon on Sunday at my sister Rose's house, and that Claire had decided for me that I would not attend. For 8 years, I had accepted every decision they made about my life, every plan they made without consulting me, every time they spoke of me in the third person as if I weren't present. I had become an extension of their needs, a useful object that worked perfectly as long as no one questioned its purpose. But after hearing those cruel words the day before, something had begun to crack inside me, a small crack that would soon become a fissure and then a total rupture. On Friday morning, while I was ironing Mark's shirts in the tiny utility room, my cell phone rang. It was an unknown number, but something inside me told me to answer. "Mrs. Eleanor Vance?" A young, friendly voice asked from the other side of the line. "Yes, this is she," I answered, lowering my voice so as not to wake anyone. It was just 6 in the morning. "This is Brenda from Mediterranean Travel. I'm calling because the deadline to confirm the check-in for the tickets to Tuscany you bought for your daughter and son-in-law is tomorrow. I tried to contact them directly, but they're not answering. Could you confirm if they will be traveling?" My world came crashing down. The tickets were there, activated, waiting, and Claire had hidden them as if they were trash. Are the tickets still valid?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Of course, ma'am. You paid for the full package. Flights, a 5-star hotel in the historic center, guided tours, travel insurance. Everything is confirmed for next Tuesday. It's a precious gift you gave them." I had to hang up. I couldn't bear to hear any more details about the love I had put into every reservation, into every detail specially designed to make them happy. That afternoon, when Claire came home from work, I decided to confront her. I could no longer pretend that nothing had happened. I found her in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of iced tea that I had made. "Claire," I said in a trembling voice, "I need to ask you something important." She looked at me with that expression of weariness she had perfected over the last few years. "What is it now, Mom?" "I'm tired. The tickets to Italy I gave you. Did you receive them?" For a microsecond, I saw panic in her eyes. Then, that mask of indifference I knew so well. "What tickets?" she asked, feigning ignorance. "The ones to Tuscany, for you and Mark. The complete package I paid for with my savings." Claire sighed dramatically, as if I were a petulant child. "Oh, Mom, I've told you 1,000 times we don't have time for trips. Besides, with our financial situation, we can't afford such luxuries." A lie. Mark had just bought a new truck, and Claire had gotten cosmetic surgery last month. But for my gift, they had neither time nor desire. The agency called me. I insisted. The tickets expire tomorrow. Claire's face changed. It was no longer indifference. It was pure annoyance. Mom, why do you have to be so pushy? If we don't want to go, that's our right. You can't force us to accept your gifts. She said the word gifts as if it were something dirty, shameful. Just then, Mark walked in, and Claire immediately changed her tone. Tell your mother-in-law to stop insisting about the trip. I'm sick of it. Mark looked at me with that condescending smile he reserved for people he considered inferior. Mrs. Vance, you have to understand. We have our own plans. We don't need you to sacrifice for us. Sacrifice. As if my love were a burden to them. That night I couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m, I got up to go to the bathroom and heard voices in the kitchen. It was Claire on the phone, whispering so as not to wake anyone. Yeah, I know the hotel is amazing, she was saying. But imagine going on a trip paid for by her. It would be super awkward. Besides, we already booked Vegas for the same dates. Las Vegas. With my rejected money, they had planned their own vacation. Don't tell Mark, but I found the tickets in my purse and tore them up. I don't want him to feel guilty later. She tore them up. My gift of love, planned for months, paid for with the money I had saved from selling the last of my wedding jewelry, ended up in the trash as if it were worthless. Saturday was the most humiliating day of my life. Claire and Mark left early, leaving me with Leo and Sophie, my 7- and 5-year-old grandchildren. The children asked me why I was so sad, and I didn't know what to tell them. How do you explain to a child that their parents had trampled on their grandmother's heart? At noon, my dearest friend Hope came to visit. I hadn't seen her in months, because Claire always found excuses for people not to come to the house. Eleanor, how are you, my friend? She said with that genuine affection I had missed so much. We sat in the small backyard where I grew my red geraniums. The children played near us. Hope, I said, and my voice broke. I think I'm dying inside. My friend took my hand. Her eyes, full of wrinkles but bright with life, looked at me with concern. What's wrong? You've never been one for drama. And then it all came out. I told her about the tickets, about the words I had heard, about years of feeling invisible, of being treated like a servant by my own family. Hope listened in silence, squeezing my hand tighter and tighter. Eleanor, she said finally, do you know what this is? It's abuse. Emotional abuse. And financial abuse, too. The word abuse hit me like a slap. I thought it was a lack of love, ungratefulness. But I had never considered it systematic abuse. My friend, you've spent your whole life, all your money, all your energy on them, and they treat you worse than a housekeeper. At least housekeepers get paid. She was right. The women who worked in the neighborhood houses earned a few $100s a week, had a day off, and their employers spoke to them with basic respect. But what can I do? I asked her. They're my family. They're all I have. No, Eleanor. You are all you have, and until you value yourself, no one else will. That night, after Hope left, and after Claire and Mark came back drunk from their day of fun, I lay awake staring at the ceiling of the utility room. For the first time in years, I asked myself a different question. What would happen if I weren't here tomorrow? The answer terrified me. Absolutely nothing. The house would continue to function. They would find a way to manage their lives without me. They might even sigh with relief. But what hurt the most was realizing that my absence would be temporary. They would miss me only until they found someone else to do my job for free. On Sunday morning, while preparing breakfast as usual, I heard Claire talking on the phone from her bedroom. No, Aunt Rose, Mom can't come to your birthday lunch. She's been a bit sick lately. Yes, in the head. You know how old ladies get, very sentimental. Sick in the head. Sentimental. Those were the excuses she used to isolate me from my own family, from my own sister. In that moment, something inside me broke for good. It wasn't a dramatic break, but a silent one, like when the seam of an old dress finally gives way under too much strain. I took off the apron I had worn for 8 years, hung it on its usual hook, and went up to my little room. I pulled out the small suitcase I kept in the wardrobe and began to pack my few belongings. I was no longer going to be the invisible grandmother, the mother of convenience, the woman who existed only to serve others. It was time to remember who I had been before I became a shadow. I hadn't finished closing the suitcase when I heard Claire's hurried footsteps coming up the stairs. The door to my little room flew open without her bothering to knock. "What are you doing?" she asked in that sharp voice she used when things didn't go according to her plans. I turned slowly, holding the photograph of Arthur that was always on my nightstand. For the first time in years, I looked her in the eye without lowering my head. "I'm leaving," I said, with a calmness that surprised me. Claire laughed. A nervous laugh, as if she had heard something absurd. "You're leaving? To where? You have nowhere to go, Mom." Her words were meant to hurt me, but instead of pain, I felt a strange sense of liberation. For the first time, I clearly saw the manipulation behind every phrase, the control disguised as concern. "You're right," I replied, putting the photo in the suitcase. "I have nowhere to go, but I also have no reason to stay here." "Mom, you can't just leave like this. What about the kids? What about us? We depend on you." There it was. The naked truth. They didn't need me as a mother or a grandmother. They needed me as a free housekeeper. "The kids will be fine. You'll be fine. You've shown you can plan vacations to Las Vegas without consulting me. You can manage your lives without me too." Claire's face turned red. She had realized I knew about her secret trip. "You're crazy. Where are you going to get money? Your Social Security check isn't even enough to rent a tiny room." Just then, Mark appeared behind her with that look of superiority I knew so well. "Mrs. Vance, don't be dramatic. We know you're upset about the trip, but you can't just leave. Be reasonable." Reasonable. For 8 years, I had been far too reasonable. I had rationalized every humiliation, every slight, every moment they treated me as if I were invisible. "You know what?" I said, closing the suitcase with a definitive click. "For years I've wondered what I did wrong for you to treat me this way. But I've just understood something. I'm not the problem." Leo and Sophie appeared in the hallway, curious about the shouting. Their worried little faces broke my heart. But I knew I had to be strong. "Grandma," Leo said in his 7-year-old voice, "why do you have your suitcase?" I bent down to his level. I took his little hands in mine. "My love, Grandma needs to go away for a little while. But I promise you'll always be my favorite grandson, and I'll always love you very much." "Don't go, Grandma," Sophie cried, hugging my legs. "Who's going to make me my Jell-O with all the colors?" Claire pulled the children towards her abruptly. "All right, kids, go to your room. The adults are talking." "No," I said firmly. "The children can listen. After all, they'll also have to live with the consequences of your decisions." Mark looked at me with contempt. "Are you threatening your own grandchildren? What kind of grandmother are you?" "A grandmother who will no longer allow herself to be mistreated in front of them," I replied, surprised by my own firmness. Claire switched tactics. She sat on the bed and began to cry with those theatrical sobs she had perfected since childhood. "Mom, please, if you have a problem with me, let's talk about it. But don't go. The kids need you. I need you." For a moment, I felt my resolve waver. This crying girl had been my baby, my little one who ran to me during nightmares, the one who told me I was the best mom in the world. But then I remembered the words I had heard from the hallway. "She's not good for anything else." "Claire," I said, sitting beside her one last time, "do you love me?" She looked at me, surprised by the question. "Of course I do, Mom. You're my mother. And do you respect me?" An uncomfortable silence. "Of course." "Then tell me, why did you destroy the tickets I gave you?" She wiped away the fake tears. Her mask was beginning to crumble. Because we didn't need them. Or because they came from me." More silence. "Why do you tell the family that I'm sick in the head?" I heard you talking to Aunt Rose this morning." Claire looked at me with pure hatred for the first time in her life. There was the truth she had been hiding behind manipulations and crocodile tears. "Do you know what hurts the most?" I continued. "It's not that you don't value my money, or my work, or my time. What hurts the most is that you don't value my love." I stood up from the bed and picked up my suitcase. "Mark," I said, turning to him, "your wife told you I was good for nothing. What do you think?" He shifted uncomfortably, looking at the floor. Well, you know that. Do you know what you're going to do tomorrow when I'm not here to wake you up at 5 in the morning to make your lunch? Or to pick up your dirty clothes from the floor? Or to take care of your children when you want to go out? His silence was more eloquent than any answer. Mom, Claire said, her voice now cold and tearless. If you leave, don't expect us to beg you to come back. I don't, I replied. In fact, I'd prefer if you didn't. I walked towards the door but stopped before leaving. One last thing, the kids' expenses, the tuition, the food, everything I've paid for over the years. You're going to have to manage on your own from now on. The look of horror on Mark's face was unforgettable. I don't think until that moment he had realized how much of his life my money had been subsidizing. You can't just leave us like this. We have commitments. You made the commitments. I never signed anything. I walked down the stairs slowly, feeling that each step was taking me away from a life that had ceased to be mine long ago. Behind me, I heard Claire and Mark's shouts, arguing with each other about how they were going to solve their financial situation. At the door, Leo was waiting for me. He had slipped out of his room. "Grandma," he said with tears in his eyes, "I do love you." I knelt and hugged him tightly, inhaling his scent of baby shampoo and candy. "And I love you, my sweet boy. Never forget that. But sometimes adults need time to learn how to love themselves." I gave him a kiss on the forehead and left the house that had been my prison for 8 years. I walked through the streets of my neighborhood with the suitcase in my hand, not knowing exactly where I was going, but feeling for the first time in years that every step was leading me toward freedom. The afternoon sun warmed my face, and I thought of all the afternoons I had lost, trapped in that house, cleaning, cooking, caregiving, existing only for others. I didn't know what came next, but I knew that anything would be better than continuing to be a ghost in my own life. I walked for an hour through the familiar streets of my neighborhood, dragging my small suitcase over the uneven sidewalks of the Phoenix suburbs. Every step physically distanced me from the house, but I also felt something inside me being set free with every yard I covered. At first, fear was my heavy shadow. What was I doing? Where was I going to go? How was I going to survive on my small social security check? But whenever these thoughts threatened to paralyze me, I remembered Claire's words. She's not good for anything else. And I found the strength to keep going. My destination, without consciously planning it, was my friend Hope's house in the Maplewood area. It was a more modest neighborhood than where Claire lived, but the houses had something my daughter's residents had long lost: human warmth. It was dark by the time I knocked on her door, and the yellow glow of the streetlights created golden circles on the damp pavement. Hope opened the door with her hair in curlers and a floral housecoat that made her look exactly like what she was: a real, unpretentious woman who lived her life without apologizing for it. "Eleanor, what are you doing here at this hour?" she exclaimed. But then she noticed my suitcase and her expression changed. "Come in, my friend. Come in quickly." Her living room was small but cozy, with furniture that had seen better days but was clean and lovingly arranged. The walls were covered with family photos, memories of baptisms and proms, captured moments of a family that celebrated life without needing to impress anyone. "I did it," I told her as soon as we sat on her worn fabric sofa. I left. Hope served me a hot chamomile tea in a chipped but clean mug and sat beside me without asking any questions. She waited until I was ready to talk, respecting my time in a way I hadn't experienced in years. I told her everything: the confrontation, Claire's fake tears, the look of horror on Mark's face when he realized the financial implications of my departure, the heartbreaking moment with my grandchildren. "And what are you going to do now?" she asked without judgment, only genuine concern. "I don't know," I admitted. "For the first time in my life, I have no plan. I've always lived for others, planning around their needs. Now I don't even know what I want." Hope smiled with the wisdom that comes from years and overcome hardships. "You know what? That's the most beautiful thing you could have said." That night, I slept on Hope's sofa, but it was the best rest I had had in years. No child with nightmares woke me up. I didn't have to get up at 5 in the morning to make anyone's breakfast. I didn't hear hurried footsteps demanding I solve some domestic problem. For the first time in 8 years, I woke up when my body was ready to wake up. The next day, Monday morning, my phone rang. It was Claire. Her voice on the other end of the line sounded different. Controlled, cold, calculating. "Mom, enough with the tantrums. The kids asked for you all night. Come home." "No," I replied simply. "What do you mean, no? You can't live at Hope's house forever. Be reasonable." There was that word again. Reasonable. As if my feelings, my dignity, my value as a person were something unreasonable. "You're right. I can't stay here forever. I'm going to find my own place." "With what money? Your Social Security doesn't even cover rent for a room in a boarding house." Her cruelty no longer hurt me as it used to. It was as if I had developed a protective shield around my heart. "I'll figure it out, but I'm not coming back." "Mom," her voice changed, becoming sweet and manipulative. "I know you're upset, but think about it. You have your family here, your grandchildren who adore you. Are you going to throw all that away over a whim?" "It's not a whim, Claire. It's survival." I hung up the phone and sat in Hope's small kitchen, feeling my heart beat strong but calm. I had accomplished something that seemed impossible, saying no to my daughter without feeling guilty. Hope had left early for her job at a neighborhood grocery store, but she had left me coffee and a plate of sweet bread. On the table was a note. "Eat well. Today you'll need strength to build your new life." I ate breakfast slowly, savoring every bite of the toast and every sip of the sweet coffee. When was the last time I had eaten without worrying about serving someone else? Without calculating if there was enough food for everyone? Without eating standing by the stove? After breakfast, I decided to go for a walk in the neighborhood. I was in no hurry. I had no schedule to keep, no household chores waiting for me. The feeling was strange, almost dizzying. For so many years, my time had belonged to others that I had forgotten what it felt like to have a whole day to myself. I walked to Memorial Park, a place I used to take my grandchildren to, but always in a rush, always hurried, always carrying diaper bags and worrying they wouldn't get hurt. Now I sat on a bench under a jacaranda tree and simply watched. There were ladies my age feeding the pigeons, young couples taking pictures, children playing soccer while their parents chatted peacefully. It was a world that had always existed around me, but one I had been too busy serving others to notice. An elderly woman sat next to me on the bench. She wore a simple but clean dress, and in her wrinkled hands, she held a bag of breadcrumbs for the pigeons. "Such a beautiful morning, isn't it?" she said with a genuine smile. "Yes," I replied, and was surprised to realize it truly was. It had been years since I had paid attention to the weather, the sky, the simple beauty of an ordinary day. "I've come here every morning since my husband passed," she told me. "At first I thought I was going to die of loneliness, but look, it turns out there's a lot of beautiful life when you learn to see it." Her words resonated in my heart like bells. Beautiful life. How long had it been since I thought of life as something beautiful? "What's your name?" I asked her. "Grace. And you?" "Eleanor." "A pleasure to meet you, Eleanor. You know what? You have the face of a woman who is starting something new." I laughed for the first time in weeks. A real, unforced laugh. "Is it that obvious?" "It's in your eyes. They have that mix of fear and hope that we women have when we decide to change our destiny." I spent the whole morning talking with Grace, and I discovered things about myself that I had forgotten, that I liked to talk about books, that I had opinions on politics, that I could make people laugh with stories from my youth. It was as if I had found lost pieces of my personality, buried under years of serving others. At noon, I returned to Hope's house feeling different, lighter but also stronger. My phone had rung several times. Messages from Claire, some pleading, others threatening. Mark had called 3 times. There was even a voicemail from Leo, my grandson, asking me to come back. But for the first time in my life, I decided that my emotional needs were more important than the guilt others tried to impose on me. That afternoon, I made a decision that would change everything. I went to the bank to check my account. For years, I had allowed Claire to handle my finances, to make my life easier. I discovered that I had more money saved than I thought. Not a fortune, but enough to rent a small apartment and live modestly for several months. I also discovered something else. I had a savings account that I had opened years ago and completely forgotten about. The money from the sale of my old house had been growing with interest all this time. For the first time in 8 years, I smiled looking at numbers on a bank screen. I wasn't rich, but I also wasn't the destitute, dependent woman Claire had made me believe I was. I left the bank feeling powerful. I had resources, I had options, I had the real possibility of building an independent life. The world hadn't ended when I stopped serving others. On the contrary, it was just beginning. 3 weeks after I left, I had found a small apartment in the Fresno Apartments complex. It wasn't luxurious, but it had something Claire's house never had. It was mine, a 300-square-foot space with a kitchenette, a bathroom, and a bedroom that opened onto a patio where purple bougainvillea grew. The rent was manageable with my Social Security and my savings. In the mornings, I had coffee and toast while looking out the window, watching the neighbors leave for work. In the afternoons, I read novels from the public library or walked to the city market to buy only what I needed without having to calculate portions for a whole family. It was a simple life, but it was mine. On Thursday afternoon, while arranging my few books on a shelf I had bought at a flea market, I heard a knock on the door. When I opened it, I came face to face with my entire family, Claire, Mark, and my 2 grandchildren holding their hands. Claire was wearing a black dress I had never seen before, as if she were in mourning. Mark had deep, dark circles under his eyes, and the desperate expression of someone who has discovered they can't solve their problems with money. The children looked at me with a mixture of joy and confusion that broke my heart. "Can we come in?" Claire asked with a forced humility I didn't recognize. I let them in, more out of curiosity than politeness. I wanted to see what new strategy they had devised. They sat in my small living area, and for the first time in 8 years, I was the host in my own space. Claire looked around with disguised contempt, as if the modest size of my apartment confirmed some theory she had about my inability to live independently. "Mom," Claire began in a trembling voice, "we came to apologize." Mark nodded vigorously. "Yes, Mrs. Vance. We realized we treated you badly. We want you to come home." Leo let go of his father's hand and ran to me. "Grandma, I missed you so much. Mommy cries every night and Daddy is really mad because he can't find his socks." My grandson's innocence momentarily disarmed me, but I managed to stay firm. "I miss you too," I told the children, "but that doesn't mean I have to come back." Claire leaned forward with tears that seemed more genuine than the previous ones. "Mom, I know I did terrible things. The tickets, treating you like a maid, but I can change. We can change." "Really?" I asked. "And what has changed in these 3 weeks?" Mark shifted uncomfortably. "Well, we had to hire a girl to help us with the house and the kids. But it's not the same. The kids don't like her, and besides, she's very expensive." There was the truth. They didn't miss me. They missed my free services. "How much do you pay her?" I asked. "A few hundred a week," Mark muttered. "A few hundred a week," I repeated. "In a month, that's over $1,000. More than my entire Social Security check." Claire got defensive. "But your family." "It's not the same." "Exactly," I said. "It's not the same. She gets paid for her work." I was given crumbs of feigned affection. Sophie, my 5-year-old granddaughter, approached timidly. "Grandma, don't you love us anymore?" I knelt to her level, feeling my heart break. "I love you more than anything in the world, my sweet girl. But sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions to be okay." "But why can't you be okay at our house?" Sophie's innocent question echoed in the silence. Claire and Mark looked down because they knew the answer. "Because at your house, I wasn't happy," I explained gently. "And a sad grandmother can't take good care of her grandchildren." Claire stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. Mom, enough with the drama. I'm offering you an apology. I'm asking you to come back. What more do you want?" "Respect," I answered without hesitation. "I want respect." "We respect you." "No, Claire. Respect is not the same as need. You don't respect me. You need me. And it's only now that you've realized how much it costs to replace me." Mark tried a conciliatory smile. "Mrs. Vance, we can talk about compensation, if that's what you want." "Compensation?" "Yes, we could pay you something monthly for helping us, like a salary." I laughed, a bitter laugh that surprised them. "Now you want to hire me as an official employee? After 8 years of free labor?" Claire's face turned red with rage. "I don't understand you anymore. First, you complained that we didn't value you. Now we offer you money and you don't like that either. What exactly do you want? I stood up from my chair and walked to the window overlooking the patio with the bougainvillea. I want what I've found here, I said. Peace, tranquility, the ability to wake up without anyone demanding anything from me, to make decisions about my own life. But the children, Claire shouted, playing her last card. Are you going to abandon your grandchildren for your selfishness? The word selfishness hit me like a slap. All my life I had heard that word whenever I tried to think of myself, whenever I expressed a need, whenever I dared to have my own desires. Do you know what selfishness is, Claire? I asked, turning to look at her directly. Selfishness is expecting a 62-year-old woman to sacrifice her health, her money, her time, and her dignity so you can live comfortably. You're so ungrateful. Ungrateful? What should I be grateful for? For being your servant for 8 years? For you destroying my gifts? For you lying about my mental health to isolate me from the family? Mark stood up, trying to calm the situation. Okay, we're all upset. Mrs. Vance, let's be realistic. You're alone here. We need you. The kids need you. Why can't we find a solution that works for everyone? Because for 8 years, the only one who adapted was me. The only one who gave in was me. The only one who sacrificed was me. I don't want to be the only one anymore. Claire approached me with eyes full of angry tears. If you don't come back, you will never see your grandchildren again. I swear to God. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the children stood motionless, sensing the gravity of the moment. I looked at Claire for a long time. She was the same little girl I had held in my arms, to whom I had sung lullabies, whom I had comforted during her first heartbreaks. But she was also the woman who was using her own children as emotional weapons. All right, I said finally. Claire smiled, thinking she had won. All right, I repeated. But I want you to know that the only ones who will suffer from that decision are them. I pointed to Leo and Sophie. I've already learned to live without you. But they will grow up wondering why their grandmother disappeared from their lives. And someday, when they are adults, they will come looking for me to hear my side of the story. The smile vanished from Claire's face. And on that day, I continued, I will tell them exactly what kind of mother they had. One who used her own children as emotional blackmail. Claire took the children's hands abruptly. Let's go. You see she's a lost cause. As they headed for the door, Leo broke free and ran to me. Grandma, he whispered in my ear, I know where you live. When I'm bigger, I'm going to come visit you. I gave him a kiss on his forehead and let him go. When they were gone, I sat in my small living room, and for the first time in my life, I felt no guilt for putting my needs first. I felt freedom. 2 months after the final confrontation, I woke up one Saturday morning and realized something extraordinary. I couldn't remember the last time I had cried over them. The pain was still there, but it was no longer that sharp, stabbing pain that kept me awake at night. It had transformed into something different, more like a scar than an open wound. I got out of bed without rushing, made my coffee with the tranquility of someone who has the whole day ahead, and sat in my small dining area looking at the bougainvillea on the patio. It was incredible how something as simple as eating breakfast in silence, without having to serve anyone else, had become a luxury I savored every morning. That same afternoon, as I was returning from the market with my groceries, I ran into Grace, the lady from the park, at the bus stop. Eleanor? So good to see you. You look different, she said with that warm smile I had come to appreciate so much. Different how? I couldn't quite explain it. Lighter. As if you've put down a very heavy burden somewhere. She was right. During the first few days after I left, I had felt strange. As if I had lost a part of myself. But now I realized that what I had lost wasn't a part of me, but a part that had never belonged to me. The need for constant validation from others. Grace, I said impulsively, would you like to join me for a coffee? There's a new coffee shop near my place. It was the first time in years I had invited someone to do something just because I felt like it, without calculating costs, without asking anyone's permission, without worrying about the chores waiting for me at home. At the coffee shop, a small place with wooden tables and hanging plants, I discovered something about myself I had completely forgotten. I was a good conversationalist. Grace and I talked for 2 hours about books, about our youth, about the changes Phoenix had seen over the years. I laughed so much my cheeks hurt. "You know what?" Grace said as she stirred her cappuccino. "You should sign up for the dance classes they have at the community center. On Thursdays, they have ballroom dancing for seniors." "Oh, Grace, I'm too old for that stuff." "Old? You're 62. My sister learned to dance the tango at 68, and now she won't stop bragging that she has more suitors than my nieces." The idea seemed absurd at first, but as I walked back home, it began to sprout in my head like a mischievous seed. When was the last time I danced? I couldn't remember. During my marriage to Arthur, we would occasionally dance at family weddings. But after he passed, dancing had completely disappeared from my life. The following Thursday, after a week of internal debate, I put on my prettiest navy blue dress and headed to the community center. My hands were trembling as I pushed open the glass door. But something inside me had decided to try. The room was full of people my age, some couples, others single like me. The instructor, an elegant man in his 60s named Robert, greeted me with a gallantry I hadn't experienced in decades. "Ma'am, welcome. First time?" I nodded, suddenly feeling shy. "Don't worry. We were all beginners once. May I show you the basic steps?" For an hour, I learned to move to the rhythm of boleros and waltzes, stumbling occasionally but feeling more alive than I had in years. When Robert twirled me and my skirt fanned out like a blue flower, I saw my reflection in the wall mirror and didn't recognize the woman looking back at me. That woman was smiling with sparkling eyes. Her cheeks were flushed from the exercise, and she moved with a grace I didn't know I possessed. "You have a natural talent," Robert told me at the end of the class. "I hope to see you next Thursday." I left the community center feeling like I had rediscovered a part of myself that had been dormant for decades. It wasn't just the dancing. It was the feeling of doing something solely because it gave me pleasure, because it nourished my soul, because it made me feel beautiful and alive. That night I called my sister Rose, whom I hadn't spoken to in months because of Claire's lies about my supposed mental illness. "Eleanor? Sister, how are you? Claire told me you'd been, well..." "Claire lied," I interrupted. "I'm perfectly fine. In fact, I'm better than fine. I'm free." I told her everything, leaving Claire's house, my new apartment, the dance classes. Rose listened in silence, and when I finished, she sighed deeply. "Oh, sister, I'm so glad you called. I was so worried about what Claire told me, but something didn't feel right. You were never one to get nervous breakdowns. Rose, would you do me a favor? On Sunday, there's a dance performance at the community center. The students are going to present what we've learned. Would you like to come see me?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "You? Dancing in public?" "Me," I confirmed, surprising myself with my own courage. Sunday arrived faster than I expected. I wore a red dress I had bought especially for the occasion, put on makeup for the first time in months, and headed to the community center with a mix of nerves and excitement I hadn't felt since my youth. Rose was sitting in the front row, accompanied by two of my cousins who had come out of curiosity. The looks of astonishment on their faces when they saw me appear on stage were priceless. Robert announced our number, a bolero performed by our most enthusiastic students. The music started, and for a moment, fear paralyzed me. But when Robert extended his hand and smiled at me with the confidence he had been instilling in me for weeks, my body remembered the steps, and I let myself go. We danced to Bésame Mucho, and for the first time in decades, I felt like the protagonist of my own life instead of a supporting character in someone else's. When the music ended and the audience applauded, I felt tears in my eyes. But they were tears of joy, of self-pride, of rebirth. Rose ran to me after the performance. "Sister, you dance beautifully. Where has this Eleanor been hiding?" "I was there," I replied, waiting for someone to give me permission to leave. Turns out that someone was myself. That night, in my little apartment, I poured myself a glass of the wine I had bought to celebrate and sat on my bed to look over the photographs Rose had taken during the performance. In them appeared a woman I recognized but who seemed new at the same time. It was me, but it was a version of me that had been waiting decades to manifest. I looked toward the nightstand where I had my phone. For weeks it had been ringing sporadically with calls from Claire, messages from Mark, even some audios from Leo asking when I was going to visit them. But that night, for the first time, I didn't feel any curiosity to listen to the messages. I had gotten used to the silence, and more than that, I had learned to fill it with things that really mattered to me. Before going to sleep, I wrote in a notebook that I had begun to use as a diary. Today, I danced in public. Today, I felt beautiful. Today, I remembered that I am more than the needs of others. Today, I was reborn. And for the first time in years, I fell asleep smiling. 6 months after that dance performance, I'm sitting on the patio of my small apartment, which I've now decorated with plants and a wrought iron table where I drink my coffee every morning. It's Sunday afternoon, and the phoenix sun filters through the bougainvillea leaves, creating dancing shadows on the mosaic tile floor. In my hands, I have a letter that arrived 3 days ago. The envelope says, "To Grandma Eleanor," in a child's crooked but determined handwriting. It's from Leo. Inside was a drawing of him and me holding hands, along with a note that says, "I miss you so much. Mom says you're mad, but I know that's not true. I'm turning 8 soon. I'm not mad. Not anymore. Anger was just a phase, like sadness, like guilt, like fear. They were all emotional seasons I had to go through to get here, to peace." Last week, Claire called me, not to apologize, not to beg me to come back, but to inform me in that cold voice she had perfected that they were going to move to Las Vegas. Mark had gotten a better job there, and it was an opportunity they couldn't waste. "I just wanted you to know we're leaving," she told me. In case you wanted to say goodbye to the kids." There was a trap in that offer. I knew it. A last chance to make me feel guilty, to have me running to beg for forgiveness and clemency. But I was no longer the same woman who had left that house almost a year ago. "I wish you all the best," I replied sincerely. "And I hope that someday the children understand that a grandmother who respects herself is the best example she can give them." Claire hung up without saying goodbye. It was the last time we spoke. 3 days later, I received Leo's letter. And today, Sunday, while I read his words for the umpteenth time, I hear a knock at my door. When I open it, I am met with a surprise that makes my heart skip a beat. It's Leo, holding my sister Rose's hand. "Grandma!" he shouts, letting go and running into my arms. Rose smiles at me with that complicity that only sisters can share. "Claire asked me to bring the kids to say goodbye before they leave for Las Vegas. Sophie's with her other grandmother. But Leo insisted so much on seeing you that, well, here we are." I hug him tightly, inhaling that scent of baby shampoo and mischief that I had missed so much. "Is it true that you're going to live very far away?" I ask him. "Yes," he says sadly, "but I already know your address by heart, and when I get bigger, I'm going to drive a car and come visit you. I'll be waiting for you, I promise." Rose leaves us alone for a moment, and Leo explores my small apartment with curiosity. "You live here, Grandma? All alone?" "Yes, my love, all alone. Aren't you scared?" "At first, yes, but not anymore. Now I like it." He sits with me in the small living area and tells me about school, about his new friends, about how Mom doesn't cry as much anymore, but Dad is still angry because things cost a lot of money. Before leaving, Leo hands me a small envelope. "It's my Sunday," he says, "so you can buy yourself something pretty." Inside there are 20 crumpled dollars, his allowance for sweets from the whole week. "I can't accept it, my love. It's yours. But I want to give it to you. Mom says you don't have any money now because you left our house." My heart clenches. Even after everything, Claire was still manipulating the narrative, painting me as an indigent woman who had made an irresponsible decision. "Leo," I say, bending down to his level, "you know what? Grandma does have money. And more importantly, Grandma is happy." "Really? Really? Do you want me to show you something?" I take him to the kitchen and show him the photos I have taped to the refrigerator. Images of my dance classes, of my outings with Grace and other friends I've made, of the small herb garden I've cultivated in the patio. "Do you know what this is?" I ask, pointing to a photo where I'm dancing with Robert. "Is that you, Grandma?" "It's me. Dancing. Something I love to do very much. You look very pretty. I feel very pretty. And do you know why?" He shakes his head. "Because I'm doing things I like, with people who treat me well. in a place that is only mine. Leo looks at me with that instinctive wisdom that children have. Is that why you left? To be happy? Exactly. When Rose and Leo leave, I stand at the door watching them walk away. My grandson turns around several times to wave at me, and every time he does, I send him a kiss. I don't know if I'll see him again soon. Maybe years will pass. Perhaps, as he promised, he will return as an adult to seek his own answers. But I no longer live in the maybe, I live in the now. That night I prepare a special dinner for myself. Roast chicken, my favorite dish that for years I only cooked for other people's special occasions. I put on music, pour myself a glass of wine, and eat slowly, savoring every bite. After dinner, I sit down to write in my diary, a habit I have kept religiously for these months. Today, Leo said goodbye. It wasn't as painful as I thought. I think I finally understood that loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing your own happiness for theirs. Sometimes, the purest form of love is to teach by example that each person is worth enough to demand respect. I've learned that family isn't just the people who share your blood. It's the people who share your joy, who celebrate your triumphs, who respect you in your decisions. Grace is more family to me now than Claire has been in all these years. I've learned that it's never too late to reinvent yourself. That at 62 you can learn to dance, to live alone, to be happy. That old age isn't synonymous with resignation, but above all, I've learned that self-love is not selfishness. It's survival. It's dignity. It's the foundation on which any healthy relationship is built. I close the notebook and walk to my window. The city stretches out before me with its thousands of yellow lights, each representing a life, a story, a world of possibilities. Tomorrow, Monday, I have dance class. Wednesday, I'm going to the movies with Grace. Friday, Rose is coming for dinner. On Saturday, I plan to visit the craft market to buy new plants for my patio. They are simple plans, but they are mine. And that word, mine, has a sweet taste in my mouth, like honey or caramel. Before going to bed, I see my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me is no longer the gray shadow who lived at Claire's house. She has wrinkles, yes, but they are wrinkles that speak of frequent smiles. She has gray hair, but she wears it with dignity. She is 62 years old, but she walks upright and looks the world straight in the face. This woman is Eleanor Vance. Not Claire's mother, not Leo and Sophie's grandmother, not Arthur's widow, simply Eleanor. And that's more than enough. I lie down in my bed, between sheets that smell of lavender fabric softener that I chose, in a room that has the temperature that I like, with the certainty that tomorrow I will wake up when my body is ready, not when someone else needs me. And as I fall asleep, I think about a question I want to ask you who have heard my story. Have you ever lived through something like this? Or do you know someone who has been through something similar? I'd like you to tell me in the comments. And if this story has touched your heart, if you have felt that it somehow reflects you or someone you know, please like and subscribe to the channel. Perhaps this experience I have shared will reach someone who needs to hear it, who needs to know that it's never too late to choose self-respect over the comfort of others. Because sometimes, the most revolutionary story is that of a woman who simply decides that she deserves to be happy. Leave your like and subscribe to the channel. That way this message will reach someone who also needs it. Thank you.